guys, Phoenix here, and today I am deciding to do a little bit of a different video today. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the 10 different things that I would suggest. I'm just going to do a list of 10 because that's what it is. You know, why not? But I'm going to give you 10 things, if you've just started driving, what you should be careful of and what you should look out for. When you start driving, obviously you don't really know too much about cars mechanically. You might be interested, you might not be interested. But overall, a car is the second biggest purchase you will ever make in your life. So it'll be very, very important to take good care of it. This is a list that I would recommend of things you should look out for, do, or just make sure to check over time of ownership of your car, especially with it being your first. You want it to last as long as you can get it to last. And that really goes for any sort of car, whether it's a performance car, whether it's a tiny little rinky-dinky Fiat 500, or somewhere in between, you're going to want to look after it. So here is my list of things to look out for, starting off with number 1. Make sure you know the basic service history of your car. So when you're buying a car, you will usually have a service booklet. Not so much with newer cars, but with older cars, they did used to have service booklets. This is a physical handbook where you can see the mileage, the date, the garage, where services have been done. If not, there are other ways you can find out, especially if you're buying from a dealership or a different garage. They will usually have some history on the car as it is. But make sure you have a car that has very good service history. This is incredibly important to make sure you get the maximum lifespan out of your car. Now, dealership sort of servicing is there to make sure the car lasts up until the warranty period is over. That is what they would class as a grey line as the lifetime of a car. Now, if you want your car to go above and beyond that warranty period, which is pretty much every second-hand car in the world at this point, you're going to make sure to keep up on top of that service history plus more. And what I mean by that is you will have in that booklet usually a guideline of how long it should be in between different intervals. For example, oil changes. Now, like I say, the guidelines will give you a basic timeline to make sure the car lasts up until a certain point, but it is not the optimum version of looking after your car. If you want to get the optimum hardcore version of making sure you get the best longevity out of your car, you want to just shorten that span just a little bit to suit your needs. Now, me personally, I have an Audi S5, which is a performance V8. I want to keep on top of this performance car's engine, and I want to make sure it lasts as long as possible, because when they're looked after, they are known for reliability. They do still have issues, but we'll get onto that later. But in general, all cars, if you look after them, will run fine. Part of that is making sure you know exactly which type of oil your car takes. Now, you get different grades of oil. For example, this one here is 5W40. And then you can go all to the nitty-gritty bits that will very much specify to your car. For example, here we have the A3 B4. And this is the variant for my Audi specifically, VW's 502 to 505. These are just a few different specifications that you need to know to make sure you've got the right oil for your car. That's if you're doing it yourself. If not, it doesn't really matter too much. It just depends on what your driving style is. Sometimes a garage might recommend a certain oil for you. For example, I have 5W40 here for my Audi once it's been fully fixed. And that is because 5W40 is a little bit of a thicker oil, and it'll protect the engine, especially at high mileage, just that tiny little bit better. Especially this grade of oil that I've got here is made so I can have a good spirited driver too, and it not really affect the engine. This will protect the engine up until high RPMs, up until high heat, but I have to trade it off by changing it a little bit shorter. For example, here as well, we have Castrol's 530. This is a very, very common sort of oil that goes into most engines nowadays. This is a thin oil-ish. It's about the medium, I would say. It's what most cars would usually run on. But this is your standard long life oil. This will last a little bit longer in the engine, but I still wouldn't recommend leaving it too long. Now, what I mean by this is, as an example, if I was to change my oil on this one in the S5 every 10,000 miles may be recommended, I would like to shorten that myself personally, because I know my driving style will be quite spirited. It will get up to optimum temperature fairly quickly, and it could be short drives at a quick blast, or it could be long drives with a bit of spirited driving in between. I would then shorten that 10,000 mile range down to 5 or 7,000 miles. That way I'm keeping the engine well protected at all times, because as the engine goes hot, cold, used all the time, on and off, whether it's heating up or whether it's not fully heating up, it will degrade that oil over time, and it will make it so your engine wears a lot quicker on the inside. So rule number 1, make sure you stay on top of all your service history in general, which most of this list is actually about the service history. Make sure you keep on top of it and your engine will look after you. For example, if you're going to eat your fruit and veg, you are looking after your body, your internals will thank you. It is the exact same thing when it comes to cars. Point number 2, brake checks. Now, I want to mention brake checks especially because this is, again, one very important thing for your car as well as you. This is your safety we're now talking about. When it comes to brake checks, if you are unsure at all about whether your brakes need changing or not, take it straight to a garage and get it checked. Especially places like QuickFit, I would like to mention, not from a biased opinion, but they do free checks. So if you're not too sure, get booked in with them and they will check them out for free and let you know if they do need doing. Part of your brake checks and the service history that I'm talking about is brake fluid. Now, a lot of people may know to check brakes, they may know to change brakes, but what they don't often remember is their brake fluid. Now, brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. Over time, this will then get into the brake fluid, and with it being under heat quite a lot of the time, it can evaporate and cause very soft spots in the pedal. When I say soft spots in the pedal, what I mean is that's evaporated, the moisture's been absorbed, and the boiling point of the brake fluid has been reduced, which makes it less effective overall. I'm trying to water this information down as much as possible. I'm sort of verbally spewing all of this at you because I'm trying to think, how can I make it understandable whilst not making it not make sense, if that even makes sense on its own? I don't know. I'm trying to just water this down for people because I didn't understand any of this at the start when I started driving, what was it, 7-8 years ago? So I'm trying to make it just a little bit in between for everyone. To mechanics, this is very just, but to normal people, it's like, oh, maybe, yeah, I should look into that. But this is brake fluid. This here is DOT4. This is one of the most common brake fluids in a car. When it comes to changing this, it is definitely recommended every 2 years. If you don't know when your brake fluid has been changed, change it anyway. It is always safer to make sure you have good brake fluid. Again, you can check this. You can check the boiling point of the brake fluid. You can see if it's contaminated just by looking at the colour of it in the reservoir. But I would always recommend changing it after 2 years regardless, just to make sure your brakes maintain the full stiffness, full operable ability, whatever the words is I'm trying to use here, just to make sure your brakes work at their best they can be. Number 3, wheels and tyres. Now, it sounds basic, but it is still very important. The wheels and the tyres are the things that are connecting you to the ground. Now, that to me is quite important, especially when it comes to grip. So we'll start off with the tyres here. Obviously, I have a lovely Mercedes wheel here just as a bit of an example. One thing you need to know when it comes to the actual tyres themselves, you'll learn on your theory test that the legal limit is 1.6 millimeters on the tread. Ignore the squeak. Now, you can get tread markers here, which will tell you when the tyres are getting close to 1.6 millimeters. Usually they are marked at 2 millimeters of tread left. However, I would always recommend changing your tyres at 3 millimeters. This is because at 3 millimeters you can lose 70 to 80% of your stopping distance, which is one of the most important things to do with tyres. That could be the difference between you being in a crash or not being in a crash. If you're trying to slam on the brakes really hard, you can have some really good brakes, as I've just said, but if your tyres aren't up to standard, they will just skid along and send you into the back of little Doris in her Nissan Micra. We don't want that to happen. So if you're ever unsure, once again, you can check with your own tread depth if you know what you're doing, or if you have a garage that'll do it for you, or again, QuickFit can check out your tread depth for you and let you know exactly what they are and whether they need changing or not. Now, for them to be legal, it has to be 1.6 millimeters across the central 3/4 of the tread. That doesn't mean completely ignore the edges though, because you can also get quite a lot of edge wear on tyres for multiple reasons. One of the most common reasons would be wheel alignment. If you don't know about your wheel alignment, again, go and get it checked by an actual garage. But if your alignment is out, say if your toe is out, which is the left and right motion on your wheel, if your, for example, toe is tilting outwards, you could then expect quite a lot of wear on one of the edges of this tyre. That over time can wear it right down to the cord and make it not only illegal, but incredibly dangerous of a blowout. So I'd 100% recommend making sure you check your tyres regularly. I would say, obviously don't go overkill with it. Check maybe every 3 or 4 months just to make sure they're okay. If they're getting close, check them more regularly, but always change to a good tyre. Budgets I wouldn't recommend so much. Don't ever cheap out on a tyre. I would always go for a premium or at least a mid-range, just to make sure it maintains its good qualities, whether it could be fuel efficiency, not too fussed about the noise of a tyre really, but especially wet grip. For example, when it's raining out here in England, you are going to need that grip in the wet quite a lot. So make sure you look at the qualities of the tyre, make sure you don't cheap out on it, because even though the tyres may look the same, the compounds can be completely different. So never cheap out. Always make sure you are safe on the road, keeping those 4 spots of contact in their best condition. Squeaky wheel. Now when it comes to the wheel itself, you just want to make sure it is good for use, which is as simple as make sure there's no buckles in it. If you're driving down the road and you can feel the steering wheel juddering, it could be a buckled wheel, or it could even be the wheel balancing. So on your wheel, you'll have wheel weights on the inside, or if you've got a steel wheel, it could be clamped on the outside of both sides of your wheel. That makes sure your wheel stays perfectly balanced as it rotates on the road. And if it isn't well balanced, you will also feel that steering wheel vibration, which will not only do your heading, but it can also, for example, if you've got a very cheap little thing that you're driving about, you could even rattle your dashboard to pieces, because all you'll feel is as you're going down the M62. And I don't think you want that to happen. When it comes to these bad boys going back on, you also, squeaky wheel, want to make sure the surfaces and the hub are nice and clean, because if you have surface rust on these bits, if you're doing it yourself, it can come loose, and that is because it's not sat fully flush onto that hub. So you want to make sure it's always clean when it goes back on the car. Number 4, I'm going to talk about coolant and the cooling of your vehicle. Now, cars are designed to sit roughly at about 90-95 degrees, which is what's known as optimal temperature. Some cars will have a temperature gauge where you can actually see that and regulate it. Some cars are terrible and they don't even show you that until it gives you a warning, like saying your engine just exploded. They can be a bit useless, but make sure you always check out your cooling system. It's often an overlooked feature until it becomes a problem. I'm specifically focused on this at the moment because, again, I have an Audi, and Audis are quite well known for their thermostats to get stuck, whether it's open or closed. Mine got stuck open, which is the best of the two, I think, but it's still not good. If your car's not reaching optimal temperature and your thermostat is stuck open, for example, all that's going to do is make it so the car not running optimal is wearing down its components a bit quicker on the inside. The oil may not get thin enough to circulate the engine very quickly. As things heat up and cool down, you've got things that expand and contract in the metals, and all of this just adds up to making the engine wear a bit quicker. So it's not ideal for it to go cold, but it's not ideal for it to go hot either. If it overheats, for example, it could be as dramatic as cylinder heads warping or the head gasket blowing. It could just completely melt internals and make it so the engine goes kaput. So neither are very good. And this is all based on the cooling system, which often, I say often, it'll always have coolant in it. Part 1 of coolant, again, within the service lines, make sure you know exactly which coolant goes in your car. It is very, very, very important that you know this, because if you add the wrong coolant, or you add a version of the same coolant that doesn't mix with the original coolant that is in there, you can also get this. So make sure you know what mixes and what doesn't. You can find it all on the internet. Make sure you know what coolant goes in your car, because if you mix them or put in the wrong one, it can give your engine catastrophic damage. For example, head gasket failure. It could corrode the inside of the engine. It could make it so you have to rebuild the top half of the engine because you've just put in the wrong fluid. That's a very dramatic side, but just make sure you don't do it. On those same lines, nearly every person does this, because they'll all say, oh, it's fine, you don't need to worry about it. And it's quite worrying how many people think they don't need to worry about it until it is too late. And that is topping up the coolant with standard tap water. Tap water has quite a lot of minerals, I think it's calcium and stuff like that in it. For example, if you look in your kettle, you will see all of that build up inside the kettle. That is because it is the minerals inside that tap water. What you don't want in your cooling system is exactly that. That water will corrode the internals of your engine, which again could lead to things like head gasket failure, or it could corrode your thermostat to get it stuck like it has mine. It'll rust the components away on the inside until they're not very well usable anymore, and overall shortens the lifespan of your car. So you want to make sure, first of all, you get something what's known as distilled water or deionized water. This doesn't have the minerals in that we'd have in tap water, and it is safe to use on cooling systems. You can leave it in there for however long you want. Wouldn't quite recommend however long, but you can leave it in there for a long time and it's not going to do any damage. This is what you need. Don't cheap out, it's a couple of quid for a 5 litre tub. In the same guidelines, again, make sure you get the right coolant. For example, this one here is G12 coolant. It's the red one, which is an oat coolant, OAT. That is organic something, whatever it is, I've completely forgotten off the top of my head. But this version of coolant is the correct coolant for my A5 at this point in time. I've cheaped out a little bit and gone for the basic one, but you do, for example, have G12 Plus, G12 G13, and they've all got completely different properties. Some can mix with some can't mix with some. It can take away the properties or it can cancel out the properties that your engine needs. Make sure you get the right one, it will save you a lot of time. And change your coolant, I would say between 2 to 5 years. These aren't really designed to break down easy, they're designed to last you the lifetime of the car, but that doesn't mean don't change it. If you start to see your coolant reservoir getting rusty or your coolant colour looking a bit nasty, or if it feels like your engine's, again, not heating up or it's overheating, check your coolant components, get it fixed, change your coolant. Number 5, spark plugs and glow plugs. There is a difference. Now, if you have a diesel car, you have glow plugs. If you have a petrol car, you have spark plugs. Now the difference is, the glow plug will just heat up the combustion chamber in a diesel to start off that combustion process when it's a cold start. It doesn't really get used too much after that. It is there to provide that heat initially. A spark plug is used all the time. That is there to ignite the combustion inside the chamber as it introduces fuel and air, combusts and sends it back out the combustion chamber. So that is needed every single time that piston strokes up and down, not fisting someone's nan. When it comes to these, you want to make sure you've got, for example, the right one, and I wouldn't cheap out on them either. For example, again, this one is for my S5. I've done my research, I've had a look, and S5s, or Audis in general, tend to seem to use, from what I've looked at, the NGK platinum, laser platinum spark plug. So I thought, I'm going to go OEM, I'm going to go safe, this is what Audi recommend, this is what I'm going to replace. If you don't know, take it to a garage, let them do it. If you're confident, have a look at which ones they need, go ahead and change them out. There are a few different types of spark plugs. You can get, for example, copper, this one's platinum, you can get iridium, and they all have different properties. Platinum here is probably one of the best ones for longevity, but they've all got different mileages that they can do. They've all got different amounts of spark they can produce as easy. It all depends what your vehicle needs. Make sure you get the right one and make sure you get the best one for your car. Glow plugs. Again, make sure you just get the best ones for your car. I again go for OEM. This one is from my A5, which is a 2-litre diesel, and from what I've looked at, they take Bosch glow plugs. So I've just gone for a simple replacement Bosch glow plug. These are recommended every 100,000 miles generally on cars. Preventative maintenance is the key. Make sure you do it before something goes. They will last longer, but that's not to say don't ever do it. Change these about 100,000 miles, you will be fine. Spark plugs all depend on which type it is that's actually in it. For example, these platinum ones, they probably could last a bit longer, but I would leave them for about 60,000 miles and then change them, depending on my driving style as well. I'm going for quite a harsh service plan on my own car, so I'm going to do everything early to make sure it is all preventative. That is the best way to have your car last as long as possible. So simple facts are, make sure you don't cheap out, get some good ones for your car, especially OEM ones. Have a check on the internet, you'll be able to find it easy enough, and change them proactively before anything goes wrong. That leads me nicely on to preventative maintenance in general for number 6. Number 6, always do preventative maintenance. Don't wait until something explodes, because it can cause a chain reaction of problems. Say if you're in a bad financial position at that point, you could then leave it too long, which will cause something else to break, and then something else to break, and before you know it, you've got a massive mechanics bill to deal with. Always do things before they go wrong. That's not to say if something works perfectly fine, just go and change it, because if it works, there's no point in changing it, you're just wasting your own money. But if it is due, and it could break at any point, then I would recommend having it done by a garage, for example. This could be something, if I go back to my Audi again, it's quite a common thing for PCV valves to fail. I'm not going to explain to you what a PCV valve is. If you've just started driving, you couldn't give one, you won't understand at this point in time. You might understand, but I'm not going to waffle on with a load of jargon. But PCV valves on Audis are quite common to fail. Depending on the mileage and when they're recommended, I would probably say 5,000 miles before, just get it changed. Save yourself the hassle of something going wrong later down the line, just get it changed. For example, on my A5, I think it was recommended 100,000 miles. It somehow managed to do 180,000 miles without a problem, but it's now got to the point where I've gone, yeah, I'm going to change that. And I've changed it, and that's not going to be a problem now for a God knows how long time that could be. It could also be simple things like additives to make sure your car runs perfectly well. This one is one that I wouldn't recommend too much, but it's one that if you want to just keep on top of things every so often, I would add it. This one is an engine oil flush. So when you're doing an oil change, you can either request this by a garage, or if you're doing it yourself, you can do it. Put it into the engine, let it run for 10-15 minutes, get it all recirculated with the oil, and then drain it immediately. This simply just cleans out the oil, gets all the carbon deposits from inside the engine, and flushes it out the system. I would say probably this is alright to do every 50,000 miles. However, there is a risk. For example, if there's a lot of carbon deposits or a lot of sludge in your engine and this tries to clear it, it can then block narrow oil ways and cause a bigger problem on your engine, so be careful when using this sort of stuff. That goes for any sort of additive really. But on the same lines of Cataclean, you can also get actual fuel cleaners, and that will be something that you just tip into your fuel at 1/4 of a tank, drive around normally for a bit, let it burn off that 1/4 of a tank, and it'll send it through the fuel lines, the injectors, clear out all the exhaust and the DPF if you're using a diesel one, or you've got a PPF, I think it's called, which is the petrol particulate filter, basically a DPF but for petrols. It'll clean all of that out, and it's just something to do every, for example, on the fuel one, 3 months, and it'll make sure your injectors are nice and clean, your fuel lines are nice and clean, and it'll keep the car running like new. Preventative maintenance, change bits when they need changing, or just a little bit before, and use additives to make sure the car runs fine. Number 7, I don't have this one on me because it would be a bit weird if I just randomly had this in my house, but fuel. Make sure you don't cheap out on things like fuel. It's important for me, especially with an S5, to look after my car using the correct fuel. This is often overlooked. If you've got a tiny little car that you don't really care about, doesn't really matter too much. But if you're really focused on making sure you give your car the best it needs, you want to use the right fuel. For example, you have in England, you've got E5 and you've got E10 petrol, and then you've got your different versions of diesel. You've got the standard diesel, you've got the premium diesel. Same for petrol, you can just call it standard petrol or premium petrol. Now, the difference really is the additives that come with the fuel. More so for diesel. Petrol, you've got a different octane rating which makes it burn better, reduces the knock in the engine, and it makes it just run a lot nicer in general. Your car will thank you. As well as it's got some additives in it already, so you sometimes don't even need to use Cataclean if you're using premium fuels, because it's already got the bits in that you need to burn off all the inside bits that would clean out. Same with the diesel. Premium diesel is just standard diesel with the additives in it already that will clean your engine, because diesel is used to lubricate and clean on its own as you're using it. That's why diesels can be so reliable for longevity. Now, you can use standard versions. I'm not saying you can't ever do that. I'm not saying it's going to destroy your car if you use it forever, because cars will still love the fuel whatever you're using it, unless it's a certain age you can't use the standard version of petrol anymore. That changed. But what I'm saying is, if you are very, very keen on making sure your car goes the extra mile and has, for example, if it's us, the nutrients we need, for example, again, broccoli, have your broccoli, you get the right vitamins and nutrients. This is the fuel version. Instead of having chips, you're having broccoli. Standard fuel chips, premium fuel broccoli. That's probably the simple way to put it. Don't cheap out on fuel. Number 8, sensors and warning lights. If you have a warning light on your car, do not ignore it. If you ignore it, you will build up a problem for the future which will empty your wallet or your purse. It will not be nice. So if you have a warning light or something popping up on your car, for example, a weird noise, don't ignore it, take it to a garage, get it checked out. If you're confident you could diagnose your own problem and you want to give it a go, go ahead. If that's what you're into and you're mechanically minded, go and give it a try. It might save you thousands of pounds. But if you're going to take it to a garage, make sure you have it diagnosed properly. Get a full diagnosis. That could be with an OBD, it could be with physical checks. Make sure you know the problem before getting it done. For example here, this is just a little simple thing for me. I have got, I think it's my aircon condenser pressure switch. Just a simple thing. If something like that fails, in this case, my one on my S5 has got a leak, which is leaking aircon out of it. I no longer have a usable aircon button. It will just give me hot air regardless what time of year it is. So I need to make sure with my new condenser I've got every little bit of this is changed. I've diagnosed that myself so I can get it all fixed at a cheaper cost. But if you have anything wrong with your car, warning light, noise, screechy sound, get it checked out, get it sorted ASAP. Your wallet will thank you. Number 9, timing belts and timing chains. Some people don't know about this when you first start driving, but it is essential. You know, again, within that car's service history, it's all based on service history, what I'm talking about here. It has been done or when it needs to be done. Timing belts don't last as long as timing chains, but they are a lot cheaper to do. Timing chains can last the lifetime of the car with the correct maintenance over the years, but they are still recommended every 100,000 miles. For example, timing chains can stretch, which can then cause chain slip. And if your belt or your chain snaps or completely slips and goes wrong, that will mistime your engine and make sure your piston meets your valves and things go kaboom. You will need a new engine or an engine complete rebuild. You might as well get a new car if you've got something cheap at that point, because it will be cheaper to buy a new car. I would recommend making sure you have everything checked out when it comes to timing belts and timing chains. Like I say, timing chains last longer. Take good care of them. They can do you for thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, but do not ignore them. Check when it was last done. If it hasn't been done, preventative maintenance again, get it changed at that 100,000 mark. Timing belts. These I think usually last about 60,000 miles or just a little bit less. with them being rubber, also depending on what type of car you have. For example, Ford have a wet belt, which all mechanics hate. If you have a timing belt, cheaper to do, the parts are cheaper, the labour depending on your engine can be cheaper. Wet belt, make sure you have that changed. Again, if it's 60,000 miles, I would recommend changing it maybe every 50,000 miles. Check the service history, see when it was last done. It will make it so your engine doesn't die. And finally, my last one, number 10. Make sure you use OEM parts or OEM equivalent parts. Don't cheap out and go for some Chinese recreation of something that's just going to blow up within 15 days. Make sure you get the best parts. A lot of parts, if you buy them from an actual reputable brand, will give you a lifetime warranty, or they will give you some form of warranty that you can then apply for if it's been done by a garage. For example, if you get a drive belt, which is again another thing to change apart from timing belts. If you have a drive belt, I think Continental belts, they have a warranty if fit by a garage of 5 years. You apply for that, you have a 5-year warranty. If that then decides to snap or go wrong, or if anything fails, it can just be changed. It's a cheap part, but you want to make sure it is, again, looked after. Anything that goes on your car, make sure you check what sort of parts came off it, and make sure you have a brand equivalent going back on. For example, my Audi will tend to use things like Marl parts or Bosch parts. That's quite a common thing to be found on them. So that is what I personally will be replacing those parts with. It comes at a higher cost, but your car again will thank you. You don't want to, for example, have your leg blown off in an extreme case, and instead of someone fitting you with a full prosthetic leg, they give you a wooden stick. That's the equivalent. It'll do the same job, but it ain't gonna last you. Make sure you give your car what it needs. If a part breaks, get the OEM equivalent, which is an original manufacturer part, or what their brands would be. For example, you could have an Audi original part, but it is the exact same as Marl. That is all I mean by that. Make sure you give your car what it needs. And that is it. I'm just going to give you one quick extra one just for the sake of it. If you go to your mechanic, have a good relationship with him or her. Make sure you look after your mechanic and he or she will look after you. Mechanics have a horrible time at work because they are pretty much just told they're doing it wrong, or they're overcharging people, or they're trying to scam you. No, they're just doing the job. If you respect them, they will respect you. If you don't respect them, then they might try and overcharge you. They might say, don't come back. They might just, if you want to have a filter change, they might just give it a kick, throw it about the room, then stick it in whether it's dirty or not. You want to look after them, they'll look after you. If they come at you with a massive bill when you said, check my car, I want to know what's wrong with it, and they give you, well, your head gasket's blown, you need all your filters changing, you've got 3 bulbs that have gone out, and your bumper's falling off, so you're going to need some new bolts for that, and your antenna's come off, so you're going to need one of those. That's going to be £5,000. Don't go, oh, well, you're an arsehole, you're trying to overcharge me. No, they're telling you what's wrong with the car. They are doing their job. You wouldn't go to a hospital and go, tell me what's wrong with me, and because my foot hurts, and they go, oh, well, you've got arthritis in your foot, but you've also got cancer, we've found out, so we best get that checked out for you and sorted. And you just go, no, why? I don't want that. Well, it's like, well, they've done the job. Look after your mechanic, they will look after you. And on that note, I know this has been a long video. I've tried to water it down. I do ramble on and I do verbally spew stuff, hence I talk so quickly. So this is my first time trying to make sure I can give you guys an actual educational video. Normally I just mess about on this channel, so it's a bit of a different one for me. If you have any criticism for me, leave it in the comments. If you're a mechanic, answer some questions for all these new drivers. And if you're a new driver, ask some questions. See what you can find out. If there's something I've not cleared up, ask in the comments. Either I or a mechanic that could be watching this will reply to you and help you out. But this is my first video for educational purposes. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more. Smack the bell if you want to see me sexy face again. And I will see you all in another one. Phoenix Salute, out.